Right. Now I've had quite a few declined the meeting today, um, but we're getting more members. We've got about I think 69, 70. We really do want to get to about 100, but anyway, I've written them down today, which is a surprise for me. Stephen Lane, John Moses, who normally makes it, he can't make it today. Shaz, Sheila Lewis, Rob Center, Jenny Leeson, Chris McIntyre, Penny Grant, and Keith. Now Keith is at the Java AGM today, so he can't make it. The book draw, I thought went very well. Yeah, Barbara?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, unfortunately, Matt has had trouble. He got in touch with me only about a quarter of an hour ago, and his broadband is playing up, so he can't get in. But he sent one of the books, and I sent the other. We sent the other one. I got two nice emails back. Michael Clancy wrote a nice email back thanking us very much. A big surprise because he didn't realise he was getting one. And Melanie Woolham sent a nice email saying thank you very much for the book. So that was good. I've had help. I mean, Brian is doing the book. He actually sent me it, and he's doing a really good job, and he's going to carry on doing it. He's doing the book list, which I haven't done for a long time. So he's actually doing it on spreadsheet for me, which is a great help. So he has sent me up to date, but I've been so busy on doing the British People's, I haven't had a chance to do the pages yet. But I've explained this to Brian. He's okay with it, and he's going to carry on adding to the list, which is good. Now, Sophie. Oh, we've got another one, new one. Judith, let me just have a look and see if I can turn Judith's mic on. Right, can you hear us, Judith?
Yeah. Hello.
Great, we can hear you. Yeah, great. So we've got another new member on the video meetings, which is great. That's good to see new members. So that's really good. Yeah, Sophie. Brilliant. Sophie is taken on because as Tim found and sent to me the link to some of the liberation ships, and with Sophie is actually compiling the Australian. What is it? The ship you're doing at the moment, Sophie?
It's the Empress of Australia, and there's a couple of others.
Yeah.
So I've actually the company I work for is lucky enough that they have something called a corporate and social responsibility policy, and they actively encourage people to take up volunteering days. And you're allowed 2 a year, which are fully paid. And I've never actually taken them before because I've never thought there was anything that I wanted to sort of that inspired me enough to do. So I thought, well, and I could use my days to actually help Ronnie with some of the compilation of information. So I did the first one on Thursday. So obviously the way I did it was to print out the sheets and then to just go through them one by one. Managed to get to the S's. So it wasn't too bad. Some of it's quite difficult to read. Some of the names are very interesting names, and you can't help wondering as you type them in who they actually were and what happened to them after. But I'm hoping I'm doing another day next week, so I'm hoping to finish off that one, and then I'll move on to the other 2 ships, and then once I've done that, I'll get those back to Ronnie, and then he can put them into the format which goes onto the internet.
Yeah,
So,
that'll
but
be
obviously
yeah.
beyond that, I'm happy to keep doing stuff. It's just it's easier when you've got the full days to do it, because normally I wouldn't have that, because obviously I'm at work so most of the time,
Yeah.
or being kept busy by this one. So
That,
yeah,
that's
but
really
happy
good,
to help
Susie.
as much as I can. So
Yeah, that is really good, and that takes a lot off me as well, because I can then get on with the British. I wanted to get the Liberation ones on because we have so many questions asking what happened, because the ships are from Australia to America, and then of course the British came back via Canada home. So that is brilliant. So what we'll do is we've got to decide um, where we're going to put this list. Are we going to start off putting stuff in the people family research? Because I actually stick everything in Roll of Honour. But I think we ought to start adding things into the people family and just put a link on the Roll of Honour. What are your thoughts on this, Barbara?
For the long term, because we've got to look long term, which is the best format and place for them to be stored?
Yeah, well,
That
either
would be,
really, that doesn't
yeah,
really matter
it doesn't
because
make any difference.
they're both live, and they're both on within the Feeple family.
Okay.
But I'm beginning to think really we should put research things under the Feeple family Facebook Feeple family web pages, and because, as I said, the Roll of Honour's got so big now, it's getting hard to find your way through it. And I
think you've
really,
just answered your own question for me then, Ronnie. Your
yeah.
FIPO family for
Yeah.
me then. Yeah.
I think that might be best. I mean, we can put a link, because I have got Ships Home on the Roll of Honour.
Yeah.
So what I can do is put a link in that to go to the other one, so we can go between the two. I think any more thoughts on this, Ray?
No, I'm happy to go along with the consensus. I agree. Wherever it should go, you feel most comfortable with, really. No problem.
I think that's a must to get it on.
All I would say, all I would say, Ronnie, is to make it as easy as possible for people to get access. That they can follow a link without going through too many, subsequent links.
Yeah,
it's easily accessible to the.
Yeah, I think, Ray, this is getting the problem with the Roll of Honour, because I've got so much on there, and you've got to go from one thing to the other to find things. But I think really I've got to make it easier. I mean, this last few years, all I've been doing is sticking everything in the Roll of Honour, which is okay, but that's getting so big. It's getting a bit, hard to find stuff.
Getting clunky, isn't it, Ronnie?
Yeah, that is really, yeah.
So much data there.
Yeah, so I think I should concentrate more on getting it easy to follow in the Feeple family.
I think, Ronnie, if you've got a Roll of Honour, it should just be the Roll of Honour without anything else, really. Or possibly the links in the Roll of Honour to what is accessible in the FIPO family, but keep the Roll of Honour as what it says on the label, really.
Right. So I'll carry that on. Another thing we've got to discuss is the book club. The book club hasn't really gone anywhere, but Brian has been kind enough to compile the list of books. Now, do we just forget about the book club, or do we open the book club as part of the Feeple family website so anyone can go into it? Because before that was password, so anyone can go. Right. Yeah, Gillian's struggling. Yeah, what was I saying? The book club. Yeah, do we make it part of the Feeple family, the book club, and so anyone can go into it?
Because Ronnie, I thought when we set it up, it was an incentive to join the FEPO charity group, so that it was limited to the members.
Yeah. So do you want to keep it the same? So Brian's list go within the charity part, or do you want to put Brian's list in the Feeple family open part? Public part, so anyone can use it. What do we think?
Well, if it's just a list, if that part's just a list, I mean, anyone can access the list, can't they?
Yeah. Well, the list. What I've asked Brian to do, and what he has done, he's done it really well, is he's added the name of the book, the author, and when it was published. So the list is. I think as a list that should go in so anyone can read it, so they can see what books are available, because it's part of the Feeple family public pages, isn't it, really? But then we've got to decide, Barbara, what to do with the book club. Do we put the book club within the charity pages, and so anyone who goes into the secure pages of the charity can go into the book club? They don't have to join two different things, and that's what it is at the moment. What do you think, Barbara?
I actually thought that the book club was going to be used, well, firstly, because it's a really good thing, and I was hoping we were going to get possibly some authors, like Martin, to come and do a bit with his own book, which, I haven't got it, but I know from people who have got it, find it, a really useful book. And the fact that, Martin is doing actual archaeology and that sort of research, it would be fascinating, Martin, to have you to come along and talk about not only your book, but about the work that you're still doing.
Sure.
Yeah, and that, although and with you coming perhaps to the UK soon, to me that would be absolutely fabulous to be able to have you while you're here to do some sort of either on live like this or a recording, and that will go out.
Before we go anywhere, Barbara, what I'll do is I'll shut down the Facebook page, because that could be slowing down our connection.
Okay.
I'll just shut that down. That could be slowing down our connection because they're actually going through. Go on, Barbara. I didn't get that because it broke up.
Okay. It was just saying that, one of the things is not just that we've got lots of books that are, well, call them second-hand if you like, but we've got the opportunity to talk to authors like Martin. I don't know if Ray, are you doing a book too?
Yes, it's in the final throes of completion.
Yeah, there are books that I think would be absolutely fascinating that are either just come into the print or have been recently in print, like we did with Louise Cordingley when we did the Jangi Cross. I found that so good to talk to an author about that, and I think it's an incentive to get people to join our charity group and benefit from that sort of thing. Because some of the meetings that we have are very much centred on research. Not everybody does a lot of research, or they only do their personal research. And it's good to encourage people to come onto these meetings with a broader aspect of what we can actually be doing. So, my own personal point of view is to either, if they're second-hand books that, are not, I won't say they're not so interesting, but a different aspect, should perhaps be accentuated by the odd occasion where we get an actual author. I'm sure Ellie Taylor, now that the petition has finished, because she must be exhausted, and Pam Gillespie too, Ellie will come and talk about the 2 books that she's done. And I think people will be interested, especially if you show it on the Facebook page where anybody can see it. Maybe that's an incentive for them to come and join us and contribute. Sorry, I'll shut up. Okay.
Yeah, well, we did it with Louise, and I also did it with John Cooper, and we'll try and do it with Martin and with Ray. So we get you on, get an interview with you, Martin. I think you'd be okay with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, sure. Just let me know and we can organise that. That's no problem.
Yeah, because everybody else is on. Martin is Beds and Herts. 5th. Yeah, Martin?
Yep, 5th Beds and Herts, yeah.
Yeah, so Martin is quite well up on that. So anyone who wants to know anything about the 5th, that video this morning, Martin, was really, really good. That was a brilliant link. Thanks for putting that on.
Yes. Well, I bought a copy of that several years ago, and I just, after seeing the post about Tom Collins, I suddenly realised, I thought, hang on a minute, he's in that video. So I pulled it out this morning and went back and went through it and sort of discovered, oh yeah, he is in there. And so then I sort of thought, I'll have a look online, see if the DVD is still available. And then, of course, it came up that this History Dust channel, which must be part of the History Channel, I'd imagine, just posted it online last month. So there it was.
That was really good. I've got halfway through it because the meeting came up. But
it's very good. It's very good because it's so fast moving. And the story just continually flows and flows, and some of the footage they've got I'd never seen before, because you get towards the end, there's some repatriation footage as well. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
So we'll have members looking out for, family members.
Yeah, well, that's right, because
I was thinking I might see Dad here.
Yeah, you never know, do you? Yeah.
No. Anyway, that getting back to Ray, you're in Saigon. Are you in Saigon now?
No, I'm in Ubon now.
Oh, you're in Ubon.
Thailand.
Yeah. I got it right that time. Ubon. Yeah, brilliant. But you've been to Vietnam.
Yep. We had a 10-day break.
Of course, Barbara and myself are quite interested because both our fathers were there. Barbara's was there earlier than my dad.
Yeah, from June 42.
42. My dad didn't go until 45, after the railway was finished. Your dad went to Saigon and then on the railway, Barbara?
No, he did. He was lucky enough not to go on the railway.
He didn't go. He did.
He went to build airways in a place called Phumi, Phumi, but that's all that I know that he left from there. And there's not a lot left in Saigon now. There's just the go downs, because when we went out to Saigon, that was the first thing we did. Jumped off the plane, went to the hotel, then straight to the docks. But there's not much left there. And somebody has told me that they're going to take the go downs now as well. It has obviously been totally, revamped with having had the American War and everything in Saigon too. And everybody we spoke to, if you said about the war, if we said World War II, they literally did not have any knowledge of what happened then. But looking over, I don't know if Ray, if you went down to the dock side where the go downs were, if you look across from there, it is still just sort of open jungle. And the thought of them, if you're captured, you're supposed to escape. You can see why they didn't escape. And listening, as I told you all last time, to the recording of the one chap that was at the, it's recorded and kept at the Imperial War Museum, and listening to the conditions they were kept in, and often they had to work. They did 12 hours came back, had something to eat, and we know that wasn't very much. Then they'd do another 6 hours. They were working 18 hours a day, a lot of them. So they hadn't got the energy, most of them, to even think about escaping by any route. Yeah, I know it wasn't as bad as being on the railway. Dad was possibly very lucky. But it was still, he weighed less than 55 kilograms when he was freed. So
he was in 316 battery, wasn't he?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the Surrey battery, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, a Warwickshire man transferred to the Surreys. Yeah. He was enlisted in the Warwickshires.
I've got a copy of their diary, their war diary. Have you got a copy of that?
Which one is that?
That's from WO3611341.
Do you know, some of these things I had about 10, 15 years ago, and I found it very emotional, and I put them away. I've got various things, some Glossop. Is it Glossop?
It's quite generic. It gives them their timeline from through Malaya, Singapore.
I think I've got I've got the big things that Keith got me that were printed out, and actually before they even left this country, it's all what they were taking with them and the route planning, who was going where. And then when they're in Singapore, it's got them where they're at Woodlands.
Yes,
and then they
that's
go
the one.
up
That's
to,
probably the same file then. Yeah,
it's up to Kluang Airport.
Yeah, so it gives them a timeline from when they left the UK.
Yes. Keith got that for me. Yeah, and
they were
I got it out again a few weeks ago, and looked at it. And then when I listened to this chap explaining, how it had been, because he was a 316 battery man, it all started to fit in really. It's sometimes because when we start researching our fathers, most of you have probably kept it up, but I started in about 2008, found it extremely distressing and emotional, not just about my dad, but about everybody. So sometimes I have to take a break from it all, and just recently I've sort of gone back and done a little bit more because I found it hard to believe that Dad was at Kluang. I didn't realise he was up there. And it was interesting learning about the evacuation back down into Singapore, and some of the things that weren't very good with the officers too. A bit like Alistair Urquhart said, some of the officers looked after themselves and didn't always, pay high regard for the ranks. But that's it. Anyway.
Do you know exactly where he was on Singapore throughout the whole campaign?
No, not really. Right. It's something I've said that I ought to go back and look at pre the surrender, because we don't always look into that. Because even before he went out. Sorry.
Well, just because the reason I actually was researching the fifth searchlights is because there was a small company attached to the Beds and Hearts when they went down to Macritchie. So I was just wondering if he was among that group. There was probably about 75 of them attached.
I don't think so. So he was in Woodlands and then sent up to Kluang, and then they came back down into Woodlands again. But it's interesting on his index card is that his date of capture, which is something this is spurring me on to research, his date of capture isn't until the 17th of February, which I'd expected it to be the 15th. So whether it's just, one of those things, I don't know. But it was interesting to suddenly look at it and think, oh my goodness, he's not down as being captured on the 15th. It's the 17th.
You do see a bit of that because some of them were actually put into areas and they actually weren't taken over by the Japanese until the 16th or the 17th. I suppose it's when they actually were, formally surrendered or formally captured.
And the little islands off Singapore, they weren't captured till 2 days later. So he could have been on one of those.
Yeah.
Anyway, that takes me on. You were talking about we were talking about the book club, and you did mention the conditions and everything. Now, next month's book we've got to pick. Now, I said to Matt, because Matt's got most of the books, I said to Matt, August the 15th is Feeple Day, so we really want something to cover all of the Far East, not just an area. So I asked him, I put forward Knights of Bushido. I know it's a bit gory in places, but it does cover the whole of the Far East, by Lord Russell of Liverpool. It does cover the whole Far East, although it is gruesome, and he did write it, I think it was 1950 something. So he did write it. I think he took a lot from the war crimes trials. I think that's how he wrote it. It was based on the war crimes trials, because it is very gory in places. But it does cover the whole of the Far East. So I put forward to Matt the Knights of Bushido. He's actually put forward Forgotten Voices of Burma, Chindits, Wingates, Last Expedition, The Railway Man, and The Colonel of Tarmacan. But again, we're getting to a certain area, and I think really this month's book should cover the Far East. What do we think?
Why, if the books are going to be done on a database, why don't we number them and draw a book like you do for yours? Just do a book draw.
Yeah, we
and
can
choose the book that way.
Yeah,
maybe not for next month, because I think you're right. If it's for VJ Day, that you do something relevant to the whole of that. But you could do it by numbering the books.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could do it by numbering the books and doing it that way.
I think the only book that I've looked through, I don't know if you've thought of one, would be Lord Russell's book. Let me just get it again. The Knights of Bushido. As I said, it is very gruesome, but it is on the war crimes trials, so it's going to have some bits in it that you think, oh, did I want to read that? But what do we think? It's not a new book, of course, because that was 1950. I think it was 1952. Do we want to use a book like that, or what do we do? It's open. What do we think? Come on, Steve, you have a little say. Come on, we want somebody, a new voice on the subject.
I'm one of the new guys. I have to say I've got no strong views on this. As far as the book cover is concerned, Knights of Bushido sounds fine.
Yeah, it does cover the whole. It even covers the Ramusha, the native labour. Yeah, the native labour that covers that as well. For all of you who don't know me, I don't go to meetings. I do everything here. So my saying names is not really good. I know how they're written down, but I don't know how to pronounce them. Do I, Ray?
No.
U-bomb. I've got it.
Well, got that right, but it's taken a year for you to do it.
Yeah, it's taken me a year, and I got it wrong last meeting. I don't honestly go to meetings, so I don't know pronunciations. I've been doing research since my dad gave me his diary to read in the 1960s. So that's what started me off. And that was books. So you bought second-hand books. So I used to go into Mr. Ferry shop in Great Yarmouth and buy second-hand books on the Far East. And my dad just got me interested by letting me read his diary, mainly because I was back and banned the bomb, and he didn't say anything. He just gave me his diary to read. And in his diary, he did say that they'd dug the trenches around the camps, and that was where they were going to go. The Japanese were going to put them in the trenches. In the trench they dug. This was in Saigon. So it made me think, okay, you know, I still don't believe in dropping a bomb on women and children, you know, but I can see what he meant. He wouldn't have made it home, and I wouldn't have been born, because I was born January 47. So that did open my eyes. So I used to go and buy books from Mr. Farrow, and he explained to me that his brother died out there. And it took me about a year of research at the time, because there wasn't the internet and everything then. So I found out that his brother was actually killed on the first plane out from Saigon to Rangoon, because the really seriously sick were put on the first plane out. And unfortunately, that landed at Bangkok to refuel, and taken off to go to Rangoon, the hospitals in Rangoon, it actually crashed and killed everyone on board. And I did put this together for Mr. Farrow, but unfortunately Mr. Farrow died. So he never did know what happened to his brother. Anyway, that gets off the subject. My feelings are the Knights of Bushido. Let's go through everyone. Who else have we got?
What about Gillian? I'd be really interested to hear from Gillian. Hi, Gillian.
What, Gillian? She's in a lot of pain.
Oh, right. No.
Oh, sorry, Judith, you mean?
Judith. Oh, sorry, Judith.
Judith. I thought
really
you meant
sorry,
Gillian,
Judith.
my Gillian.
Well,
no, Gillian's
I thought he meant...
No, yeah. I'd like to hear from Gillian, because she does a lot of work for you anyway. But Judith, I'm very sorry. I apologise for getting your name wrong. But please come and, talk to us.
Yeah, Judith, come on. What do you think?
Again, like the other guy, I can't remember his name even, said, this is, a lot of all this goes over my head, but I just find it so interesting listening to you all. And I'm just happy to take up any snippets that I can. This is the first time I've been able to attend a meeting for a very long time. And so I feel like I'm back at the beginning. So to be honest, I'm just happy to go along with everyone else. You're all so knowledgeable in your different ways. We're all at different stages. This is kind of quite the beginning of my journey. It was my dad's cousin that was on the HMS Exeter, but it's through Ronnie and all the work that he does that I'm sort of trying to. I'm overwhelmed by all the information that Ronnie's put up on the site, and I really don't know where to go from here. So I just thought, right, start with coming to the meetings and see where that would guide me.
Yeah. I think that's the idea, Judith. Meetings and be part of it. Because we want people to be part of the meetings. This is one reason we want to expand the membership, because we do tend to get the same faces. I mean, I can see a pretty face there now. Yeah. Bernard. Yeah, Bernard's hiding up.
See me, Ron?
Oh,
I've been hiding.
Did your ears go hot the other day? Because Gillian called me through. She said Bernard's on the radio. I said, Bernard's on the radio. She said, yeah, that weren't you at all, Bernard. That was a Welsh chap in Norfolk on Radio Norfolk. And she was calling me through to listen. That's just like Bernard. That's just like Bernard.
Are you complaining about the way that I talk, Ron?
No, Bernard, you've got such a good accent, Bernard. I love it. I love it. It reminds me of our visits to, because we used to hill walk, and that reminds me of our visits to Wales. We used to love Wales. Wales, Peak District, Lake District, and Scotland.
Because they've got hills and you haven't got hills. That's what it is.
We haven't got hills.
No hills where you are.
We are in the highest point, our caravan. Here we aren't. We're low here. But when we got North Norfolk, we're in the highest point, our caravan, in Norfolk. And that is, I take the dogs for a walk, and of course I've had chest problems, but it does get me out of breath. It's quite hilly there, and it was caused by, this is getting off the feebles, but that was caused by the ice flow going out and causing the rivets in the sand, and of course they went up high, and that's where our caravan is, on the highest part. Beautiful. Of course, it's in a nature reserve, and it's really lovely there. Love getting up in North Norfolk. Here we can walk along the Broads. It's a nice walk, but it's not as. We've got our special seat, which Gillian hasn't been able to make a few months now because of hips. And but hopefully we're getting there with that. So hopefully she got to have 2 new hips. Anyway,
Bernard has been very quiet, hasn't he?
Yeah, Bernard has been quiet. So let's hear from Bernard.
What can
Come
I
on,
say,
Bernard.
Ron?
Have you got your new computer yet?
No, not yet.
Dear, oh dear. Are the Welsh always slow, Bernard?
I haven't got the money. I haven't got the money, Ron.
You have, Bernard. Don't give me that. Don't give me that.
I was looking for the gift from the group.
Oh yeah. Well, if
you deserve one for being so cheeky.
If you're thinking about email, Bernard, I've been down to the shop, and I've bought 2 pigeons. And
2 pigeons.
I found out how to tie the messages to their feet, so I can't send them, Bernard. The only trouble is we've got to have a train journey to Wales so they know which way to go.
Well, I live on top of the mountain, Ron.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later, Bernard, when we finish the meeting, just about your computer. But anyway,
can I forgot to say, Tom Jowett gave me one of his copies of No Surrender about the the Exeter boys.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading that at the moment, and I'm enjoying it. I think it's an easy read for me. That's my first exposure to reading about it.
It is. That's a nice book to read. It's not a hard book to read. It's quite, and it does go into the Exeter quite well. So
it expresses everything very well. That it makes it easy to read the book. I was a theatre nurse, so I'm into gory. So
well, you might win Knights of Bushido though.
Maybe.
To be honest, that is quite gory. I've got one copy which I got halfway through it and I just couldn't read anymore. It just because it doesn't just go into the Sumatra Railway or the Thailand Burma Railway or some of the other atrocities like Sandakan. It doesn't just end there. It goes into the native labour and what happened to them and how the Japanese tended to just leave the camps if they got cholera, just leave them. They just left them to die. That's all they did.
Yeah.
And going through Singapore, as in your film you put on, Martin, going through Singapore and getting rid of the Chinese.
Yes, that's horrific, isn't it?
Yeah, that is really horrific. That's what I found when I was doing Straits settlement, and when I put it on the timeline, I discovered that most of them died after surrender. And then when I went into it, the Chinese, they were told they could go back. They could go back to their villages because most of them are natives from. So they were sent. They were released from service and went back to the villages, and the village, some of them in the villages, handed them over to the Japanese, who just killed them. That was it. They just got rid. They'd have been better off staying in the camps, but the Japanese just went through and killed them. And the timeline I did sort of that out for me, that showed me what had happened, and then when I went into it, you could see what actually happened. And the book is very much like that. It does go into a lot of the detail, which I don't. To be honest, it gets me so annoyed, so upset. I'd rather not. I'd rather not go into that bit. Right.
Maybe Ronnie, maybe you're talking yourself out of putting this book forward, then, Ronnie.
No, yeah.
For a more, more sort of gentle introduction, like the Railwayman or the Colonel of Tamarkan, I think.
The trouble is with
easy
those
read.
books. Yeah, that is easy reading, but the trouble is it just goes into one area. Do anyone know of a book which covers the whole of the Far East without going into the gore?
One particular book that I can think of is the 1/14 of an Elephant. That's fairly broad.
Yeah, I don't think he's. I think he
Has he
might
got that
have
on his list?
on there.
Yeah.
Let me just have a look. I've got it, and it is a good book.
Yes.
He has got it. Ian Denny's Peak.
Yes, that's a very good read, that one.
Yeah. I'll ask him to do that one then. That will be getting away from, the gore of. That would be a nice introduction, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Do you all agree with that?
Because it's quite broad. It gives you a good insight into Singapore and the railway.
That is a good book.
And the aftermath as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll ask Matt to do that one. So I know Matt's going to watch this afterwards, Matt, but I will send you an email, and we'll do 1/14 of an Elephant. Barbara,
Sounds
do you want to put something together?
Oh, I don't know the book at all, Ron. I don't know the book at all.
No. Well, there's lots of feedback because it isn't a very old book. I think it's only about 2 or 3, maybe 5-year-old. Is that right?
No, it's a bit older than that. It's probably.
Is it?
Yeah, it's probably I'd say 8-9 years now. Yeah.
God, yeah. Honestly, time flies. I got that when it came out.
Maybe Martin could do something then. If Martin knows the book, maybe Martin. Sorry, Martin, if I'm dumping you into this, and you can send me a nasty message afterwards. If whoever perhaps is familiar with the book could do a supporting little bit on it. I had the easy one with Alistair last time. So.
Yeah, that was very good, by the way, Barbara.
Oh, I don't know if I went on too long.
No, that was good. That followed quite a bit.
Very good. I watched it on Facebook.
All right.
Yeah, that was
really good.
I thought that was very good. Yeah. And hasn't she got a BBC voice?
No, I've got a Brummie voice.
Yeah, she has.
I'm proud of my Brummie voice. I don't mind. I just hate hearing myself and seeing myself, so I don't.
You can't hear the Brummie in Europe.
It is. It's there. Very, very proud.
Well,
can I just say though, talking about films and books that people recommend. I went to the NMA, to the Kofipo hut the other week to meet some cousins. And I was quite surprised. A gentleman who works there, one of the volunteers, said he was going to give a 10-minute talk about the FIPO. And so I sat and listened and tried not to sort of, say too much, apart from when he recommended films to watch. And this ties in with what you were saying about that. And he said, obviously, The Bridge on the River Kwai and The Railway Man. And all I did was I chirped up and I said, well, actually, maybe something like Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And he says, oh, that's totally fiction. And I said, it may well be fiction, but I said, it's no more fiction than the film of The Railway Man. Because when I watched The Railway Man, I was quite annoyed. So, I still think watching something like Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence gives you a true feeling to some of the brutality, which doesn't come across in some of the other.
Honestly, Bowie played the role.
He does a brilliant. Well. He does,
I thought. I mean, we always associate him with music.
Yeah.
I thought he played the role really well. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a film that I'd watch over and over again.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Conte,
was it? Conte? The other actor?
Yes, Tom Conte, yes. And he is wonderful too. And the Japanese,
he was good in it.
The ones who portray it on there are really good. And I thought, I didn't want to say too much, but the Researching FIPO History Group have actually chosen Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence to show at the Liverpool Philharmonic Hall as part of their weekend connected to the art of captivity. So if they can choose to show that, I think, well, it must be a good film. And although I've watched it several times, I shall go. I've got visitors, folks. I'm going to have to leave you. I'm really sorry. But I'll catch up with you again later.
Yeah, see you later and watch the film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye,
okay. Bye, everybody.
We won't talk about you too much, Barbara. See you later. Yeah. So Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I think that's brilliant. So that is a real good book to film to watch. Anyone who hasn't watched it, I think there's bits of it on YouTube.
The whole of it is on YouTube.
Yeah, but I have got the DVD because I got that because that's such a good film. But yeah, so I'll tell him the 1/14 of an elephant. And Martin, do you want to do something on it?
Yeah, I can put something together for you.
Yeah, please, if you can. Yeah, I don't like being on too much because I tend to, you know me. I like to go in the background a bit. So that we've sorted out the book. Great. Ray, your visit to Saigon. Come on, you did start.
No, I didn't.
Off record, but we'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, I didn't go to Saigon. We flew to Da Nang in the north.
Yeah.
Da Nang was actually the first place that we visited. It was also the place where the Americans first landed when they went to Vietnam. Now, all of this trip that I did, this short trip, there was no Second World War FIPO. It was all about the Vietnam War. Yeah. So I'll be quite quick in going through it. But what I found interesting was the version of the Vietnam War that I learnt whilst I was there was quite different from what you watch on television from the American version. And I came away with a lot more sympathy for the Vietnamese and Ho Chi Minh than I arrived with. They put up a real battle for independence, not only from the Americans, but before that from the French. And for a short while, the Japanese were involved, of course. So this struggle went on for 30 years. And Ho Chi Minh, my view of him changed quite a lot over that 10 days, because there was no doubt he was a brilliant leader. And the people hold him in the highest esteem still. Everybody talks about him as a great leader and a great person, and he was the founder of Vietnam as we see it today. But we went to Da Nang. Nothing much to see there, to be honest. It's just a town, and a lot of people there. Not an awful lot to see. But we then went on the railway to Hue, which is a bit more involved in the war. There was the Tet Offensive that took place there, which I don't know too much about, but it was an advance by the North Vietnamese on the Americans, and that was the place where they split Vietnam. So north of Hue is North Vietnam, and south of Hue is South Vietnam. And there's actually a bridge across the river. The north side is painted blue, and halfway across is the yellow side, which is the south. So you know exactly where you are when you cross that bridge. Hue was quite good. We visited a US-American air base at Khe Sanh, an airstrip there with relics of B-52 bombers, helicopters and fighter jets and tanks. Quite an eerie place, because they're all sort of skeletoned out and spread over a wide area. And we also visited the caves, or the tunnels, should I say, that the Vietnamese villagers dug to avoid the carpet bombing, the indiscriminate carpet bombing of the American Air Force. The Americans, there's a statistic for you, which I can't really get my head around. They dropped 92,000 tons of bombs on this area. An area is called Vinh Moc, just north of Hue. 92,000 tons of bombs over 4 years and killed 2 million people. So that's the scale, and I've begun to realise why there was, under the surface, not a lot of love for the Americans. You could see that it's tempered by the fact the Vietnamese won and the Americans left, as we know. But there is still an awful lot of resentment towards the Americans there. And I wrote in my diary that if I was an American there, I would feel a little bit ashamed at seeing, what had happened. But nevertheless, to a neutral, which we obviously are, it was very interesting, and I learned a great deal in that day, especially when.
You can hear me,
Hello.
Ray? Yeah, I think we lost you, Ray.
Yeah.
We lost your signal. Right, Ray, we've lost you at the moment.
I'm going to have to leave, people, because my daughter's trying to contact me from the UK.
But, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Ray. That's lovely to see you and to hear from you from Ubon.
Yeah.
Right. See you later then, Ray. My nigger, mate.
Can I just say a special hello to Sophie? Hi, Sophie. We've been corresponding on email. This is the first time we've met, so nice to see you, Sophie.
Hope to see over the airwaves. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go, folks. So bye for now.
See you then, Ray.
Bye.
My nigger, mate.
Bye.
That's really surprising when we've got Australian. We got Ray coming from Ubon. Thailand. That's brilliant, really, isn't it?
Yeah, we're global.
Yeah, and we've got Bernard from Wales.
I'm going to tell people about you, Ron.
Yeah.
Sing it from the hillsides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got a good voice, Bernard?
You.
Yeah. Have you got a good voice, Bernard?
Oh, definitely.
Right,
Tom Jones.
Right, we've had a word of Judith. Sophie, you told us all what you're doing. That's brilliant. Keep it up, because and I will put when you have finished it, you will have the thing right at the top that you compiled it. I always give credit to whoever do it, so you've done it. But I think there'll be a lot of interest in that because I have so many inquiries on what the roles were coming back home. We haven't got the ones from Rangoon, but the ones we've got now, Sophie, they will be really.
Okay. Well, when I finish the Empress of Australia, I'll probably send the file to you as it is then.
And then I
so if you want to just upload that ship rather than waiting for me to do all three.
Yeah.
But hopefully I'm hoping to finish that next week. So all being well. So
yeah. Well, at the moment I'm up to.
Sorry. What I was just interested in the data that you're actually collecting.
It's the roles that they're on Roger's site as files.
Yeah.
So we've actually got the PDF of those, which we're now putting into a spreadsheet, which I'll put on the website.
So you're collecting name, service number. Are you collecting a regiment as well?
Yep. It's all going down.
Yeah, it's all going on.
So that will be good. We've actually got the departure number as well, haven't we, Sophie?
Yeah, it's an embarkation roll number. Although on some of them it's there's like a supplementary roll, so I just added in a separate column because otherwise there'd be people with the same embarkation number because it on different rolls it started again at 1. So I thought, well, better make sure we can just uniquely identify it. Some of it I can't read, but it may be possible to fill in some of the gaps using other information, possibly. I don't know. Where
Dad said
1940s typing.
So Dad told me when they were waiting for the ships back from Rangoon, where he came back from, he came home on the Chitral. When they were waiting for the notice board, which we just tend to think they caught the boat home, but they didn't. They actually had to wait for the name to appear on the notice board with a number to go on board, where they would be on board the ship. And in the diary, one thing that got me that really brought a lump to my throat was they used to go down to the notice board every morning to see if they were on the list for the next day. And he kept on saying, they were so close to home and he wasn't on the list. And they had to wait until they appeared on the list before they knew they were coming home. That brought a lump to my throat because they'd been through so much. And just to wait for their name to be on the notice board was a bit. Anyway, so they had the same thing, Sophie. Dad had the same numbers. He was given a number to go on board. So the same thing happened in Rangoon. But that would be great when we get that on. And what I'll do is I'm up to. The thing that I wasn't looking forward to, British People's Smith. I'm up to the S's, so I'm getting through Smiths. I'm up to the S's, and hopefully I'll get through the S's today. Later on, I'll have another go at them. I think I've got about 120 more S's, and there was 900 Smiths. There's over 5,000 S's names I had to put on in the S's, and there are 900 Smiths.
Wow.
But I'm getting through them.
How many Stogdens, Ron?
Not many, mate. There can't be many of you. No, of course, I haven't got to the Stogdens yet. I'm looking forward. I've got 3 people that have got in touch and said, you know, been looking forward to it. Of course, our dad was S's, of course, and I've read them, so I can just put a little more information on. But bearing in mind, this is the first run, and it's just laying out the names to the pages. I've added some information because sometimes when there's 2 of anything, like there's 2 Arthur Smiths or Johns, there's about 15, I think, John Smiths. I've gone into each one and put a little more information so we know we can tell the difference between them. But anyway, I think I've been through everyone. Steve, have you enjoyed the meeting?
Yeah, it's been interesting to catch up with stuff. My own particular interest is, if I can just say very briefly, I know you're trying to wind up now, but is on the 118th Field Artillery. And what I'm trying to do is my uncle, and I'm trying to trace his route from Cape Town to capture. He died over there in captivity in 1943. But I'm just trying to look into that. If I can ask just one question, and that's on the FeedPost site, which is the most detailed I've come across, he's shown to be, or they are shown to be, on the Mount Vernon, but on the Lewisham Archive, the 118th are said to have gone to India first. Which would have put them on a completely different boat. Now, it's one of those bits where you've got one bit of information saying one thing, one saying another. I haven't been able to check that.
Yeah, the problem is with the convoy William Sale 12X.
Yeah.
That was the convoy. My dad was on the Wakefield, and of course they went to India.
Yeah.
The Vernon actually did reach India, didn't it? But
it got near.
Yeah, that got very near to India, but then they were redirected. So the trouble is with the Royal Artillery, I can't find any lists. Have you come across any, Martin? Any rolls of what ships they were on? Because I haven't.
Not specific roles. No. Only just mentions of which regiments were on which ships.
Yeah, but what about the 118th? Have you
no.
No.
I've seen it mentioned that they're on the Mount Vernon, but I'm pretty sure I've also seen it mentioned they were on the West Point as well. So whether they were split up, I don't.
Yeah, they could have split them.
Because it depends really who they were attached to, because the 118th were attached to the 55th Infantry Brigade, so you'd assume they'd be with them, so that a detachment could have gone with the West Point as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because that's the same as the Royal Army Medical Corps. They were split. So they were split into different infantry battalions, So that could be the same thing with the RA. What surprised me, and I mean, Dad was Royal Norfolks, and we hear about the East Anglian regiments, the Beds and Herts, and Cambridges and Suffolks. But we don't hear too much about the Royal Artillery and what has within the convoy William Sale 12X. But when I've been doing the roles for the British FIPOs, what surprised me is the amount of RA. I didn't realise there's so much RA within the forces. I mean, they outnumber they outnumber the other regiments, the Royal Norfolks and the Territorials. They really do outnumber them. But there isn't so much information on the RA until I get to this, and I've come across a lot of 118th within what I propose to do is my next run will put all the regiments in the lists. I have put quite a few in, but my next run, which when I get all this laid out, will be to add all the regiments to each name. That would be handy, because what I can then do is get a whole list of 118th or Royal Norfolks within the camps. So I can then split it. So my object is to get this all laid out and then start adding information. Like on some, I have been putting when they died, what date they died, and where they're buried.
Yeah.
So I've been adding little bits like that, and that's run 3. What I'd like to do then. It's very difficult with on the index cards where they actually were captured. Some have got laid out where they were captured, but others just put the date. And it's very difficult because then we go to Hong Kong, which of course was surrendered December the 25th, 1941. And then we go to Hong Kong and you start seeing a date come up, which is very close to that. And then you start thinking, well, no, that isn't Hong Kong, because the regiment wasn't in Hong Kong, so it's Malaya. And so you start, and they don't tell you, but then when you look up the person, you find they're in Kuala Lumpur. So of course they were in Malaya, but then the date, so it's going to be very difficult to put the place of capture unless it's actually written on the card. So some I won't be able to do, which on my list, my spreadsheet, I have put place of capture. But I don't think I'll be able to go very far with that, because although Singapore stands out a mile, you know, where they were captured in, where the surrender was in Singapore, you can't really put everything Singapore, because that could have been elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it's going to be difficult. Anyway, it's been a good meeting. Yeah, sorry, Mark.
I'll just add, because 118th is partly what I've researched in Singapore as well, because they were in support of the Beds and Hearts at McRitchie Reservoir. So I've actually been trying to track down what part of 118th were. Then it's so difficult to actually pinpoint specific names or personnel, unless they died, of course. Or unless they're actually mentioned in war diaries or in certain accounts. So my best advice really is that you probably need to be searching some war diaries of people from the 118th who survived, because that's probably your best source of information. And then try and trace, pathways and where they went from that information. But it's quite difficult, must admit, because it took me many years to research my grandfather's pathway, and of course you can do so much of it, but there's still parts that you're not really sure of, and sometimes you have to make a few assumptions or draw some conclusions from other bits and pieces that you might read and be able to piece together. But it's quite difficult.
One thing that might help, Steve. One thing that might help is in the security pages, in our security site, if you go into the OneDrive documents, I've put a lot of files on there. Have you found them?
I don't think I have. I'm still finding my way around it.
Oh, well, you go into the security part, and if you go into the files, within the files I have put an index, and the RA full index is in there.
Oh, right.
So you can look down the RA, and what you can do is look at names associated with the 118th and go into the liberation questionnaire of that person and just see if they're in there on the COFIPO site, or do a search on them and find out where they were.
Yeah.
So what I've done in the past is, if I can't find any information on somebody, I'll look at the list, find a name which was associated with them, with a Japanese POW number very close to theirs, so that we know they were together, and then do a search on them.
Right. Yeah.
And then you can go on.
What is your father's name?
It was my uncle, and it's Henry Juneman, Juneman. It's a German name.
Juneman.
He is the only Juneman there. It's much easier than Smith.
Yeah. What was it? Spell it again.
Juneman. Up until the First World War, it was a double N, but they dropped that. They dropped the second N.
I'll have a look and
Juneman,
Find My Past. Have you got Find My Past, Steve?
Yeah, I've gone through quite a bit. I think I've got his number as well. We've got.
Is that?
Henry James is HJG.
Double 1011529. Is that right? Was it from Battersea?
Oh, sorry.
Henry James.
Yeah, if you've been talking to me in the last moment, I haven't been hearing because I've had network problems.
Yeah, 1101520 Gunner.
I've got 2-1, but Gunner. They're occasionally called signalmen.
Yeah. Henry James, captured when Singapore fell. Have you had a look at his index card?
I have got some stuff. I know, not in front of me, unfortunately, and now you're testing my memory, which is poor.
His index card file is on the site. It's WO, of course, 345/29. So if you look up that file, you'll find him in there.
Right.
And he is under German. This
Battersea.
That's right. Yeah, he's Battersea lad.
Yeah, he's D-Force. He went to Thailand with D-Force.
Right. Now, D-Force would have been on what?
That was,
so he would have gone up to Thailand. Yeah,
in
March 43 he would have gone up,
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
Yeah, and he died in I think it was July 53. Yeah, 14th of July 43 rather.
Yep.
Acute enteritis.
Yeah, that's surprising, Steve. The number of course, some of the index cards have got the overland date when they were sent up overland or to oversea, and the surprise in the number that went overland in D-Force or F-Force, and they died very soon after going up. It's very peculiar, how quickly they died. F-Force, you can understand it, but D-Force weren't particularly from the hospitals where they died. It was mainly F-Force and H-Force.
Yeah.
That were taken from hospitals to be sent up country. So really, D-Force, that's rather strange, dying soon after. Anyway.
He was one of 6 that died that day,
Yeah,
I'll have a look. That speedo period,
Yeah, I'll have a look and see if I can find anything. I'm concentrating on doing what I'm doing, but I will have a look. And if I do find anything, I'll message you or put it online.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, have we covered it? Oh, We got Liam.
Is it okay if Liam says something? He's desperate to say something.
Come on, Liam.
So, come on, quickly. Right, hang on a second. Right. Speak to the people. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Liam.
Say what you said.
Hi, Liam.
So my granddad was brave in the war.
Oh.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're very proud of him, Liam.
Yep.
Yeah. You're very proud of him. He was a brave man. They were all brave men.
Find out more about him. Say bye then.
Bye.
Bye.
Liam.
Bye.
Thank you for talking to us. Yeah.
Hello again.
He's got to be
your youngest contributor yet.
Yes.
It's
He
funny.
is our youngest.
He's desperate to say something.
No,
he was just desperate to say something and bugging me regularly, so I thought better let him.
Because
keep him happy. 7-year-olds.
Over the years, I coached a lot of sport. You know, cricket, football, artistic roller stuff. People, I used to coach that, and you have to be so careful with children, putting them on.
Yeah, it's
them.
fine.
So
because he was just desperate to join.
Do you know?
So, but that's why I've been on mute most of the times. Been shouting.
Even Blue Jeans have got a thing. Before I download the record, I have to agree that the record isn't going to be. Have you got the consent of the adult of the child you're putting on?
Yeah.
You can understand why.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I can confirm you have my consent anyway. So
yeah. It's
fine.
It's been a good meeting, Judith. Yeah.
So what do I do when the meeting is closed? How do I don't know how to.
If you have a look at the top, you've got a red ring.
Like a red thing like on the phone.
Yeah, just click on that and that will take you off.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
But that's been a good meeting. That's lovely to see new members, and I hope we do it again because although we come up with questions, I mean, if you think of anything, come up with it like we had the German from Steve. So that's interesting. So anything you can think of you want to ask or talk about next time, so we can do some research on it, would be great. Okay.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you so much.
Too much.
Right. And so I'll stop the record now. Okay.